Hey guys, it's Juliana, and today I'm going to show you how I made this A-frame cabin-style gingerbread house. It was a lot of trial and error, a little bit of experimentation, but I'm really happy with the end result, and I think this is something that anybody could make. So if you want to see how I did this, and you want to make this yourself, just keep watching. Here I'm starting off with a sketch for my gingerbread house. I knew I wanted an A-frame, so I just had to kind of figure out the style, the placement of all the parts, and the general look that I wanted for this little gingerbread house. This was very much inspired by a video that I saw on a channel called Made by Millie. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, but she made a greenhouse gingerbread house and it came out really, really beautiful. I'll link her video below, but I took a lot of inspiration from it, and I like the idea that she chose to make a gingerbread house out of something that was kind of a dream of hers, like having her own greenhouse. So my boyfriend and I have a dream of having our own A-frame cabin someday. So I thought that would just be a really cool thing to make into a gingerbread house. And it would be really cool, very Christmassy, and just something very whimsical and fun. So right here I have the basic shape and layout of how I want the gingerbread house to be. I made some notes, maybe where I would put windows. I just drew some trees around, although, the trees obviously aren't going to be that big. But yeah, this just gave me an overall idea of what I wanted and what I was going for. Next thing I'm going to do is build a 2-scale model of what I want the house to be like. I found some cheap poster board at the craft store, just double layered it, and use that to build a house. You can see I have the frame set up, the part of the side with the chimney, the little addition to the left, some windows that I've drawn in, where I want to mark the door. I put the measurements on the side in case I need to know that kind of stuff in the future as I'm cutting things out. And then there are areas where I might add windows later, figure that out later. I don't know when I'm actually cutting things out. But yeah, this really helped me kind of visualize what this was even gonna look like. And now that I have my model all assembled, I'm going to take this apart, cut out the windows, and then use all the pieces of this model as a general guideline and almost a template to cut out all my pieces of gingerbread to then bake. So I was just labeling all the parts of my model as I was taking it apart, just in case I needed to reference whatever the part was down the road. And then I started using a huge ruler that I had, thought it was getting in the way. So I found an old pencil case that I had and tried using that as a straight edge instead. And it wasn't working. So then I just went back to the ruler. I don't know why. It would have saved me a bunch of time if I just had stuck with this and done that instead. Moral of the story, get rulers of different sizes. Anyway, here I'm just cutting out all the windows, all the spots, maybe patching up any areas that I need to, and just getting everything all set and squared away to go for the cutting out of the gingerbread. Some areas I just kind of redid over as I was cutting out the windows. I didn't like how it was looking before, and I thought maybe it would look a little more interesting a different way. Again, it was just a lot of trial and error. If you're doing something like this yourself, don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. Draw out what you think is going to look right. Don't be afraid to go back and try something else. So that's what I did. I didn't feel like I had to stick to any set plan, and just kind of adjusted my design as I went. So I have all my template pieces cut out here that I'm going to use as a guide for the gingerbread. I am prepping 2 baking sheets with parchment paper and then flour, which don't prep your baking sheets with flour. It just creates a layer of flour under the gingerbread dough that you're gonna have to scrape off after you bake it. So yeah, I don't know why I did that. And for the gingerbread dough itself, I'm using Geek Show's construction grade gingerbread, which I absolutely loved. It came out so great. I topped that with flour just so it rolled out easier, but I will link the recipe for this down below in the description box. Here, I'm just rolling out the dough. I started on the actual cookie sheet, but Again, I realized, it's getting a lot bigger than I thought it would, so I took it off with a cookie sheet and just started rolling it out on the counter, which I think the gingerbread recipe said to do to begin with, so what do I know? But yeah, just rolling that out, getting that all squared away, and then just picking out pieces of my template that will fit on whatever piece that I rolled out, just kind of puzzling them all in the best way to fit. And then after this, shortly, I just started cutting all the pieces out with my X-Acto blade. Up using about 1.5 times the recipe for this dough. You'll see here the bigger sections were definitely the hardest part. They took a lot of dough, a lot of messing with, a lot of rolling a little more just to get it big enough to fit these super huge panels. But we made it work. Just one last step. You can see this dough held up super well, even for these really delicate pieces. There were definitely some jagged edges from the parts that I cut out from the dough. So I took some 80 grit sandpaper and just sanded those edges clean, brushed it off with a brush, and it was all good. Royal icing to assemble our gingerbread house, I'm using the Wilton meringue powder and Wilton's Royal Icing Recipe and just whipping that all up. I'm using a pretty thick consistency to stick everything together, especially the initial assembling parts. Here I'm just using the Perfecta-Gel Gold gelatin sheets for all my windows. This is another idea that I got from Made by Millie's gingerbread house video. Again, that video is linked below, but I thought that was just a really nice, cool, simple way to do these really pretty glass looking windows without having to worry about melted candy and all that. So that's what I'm just doing right here. I'm installing these pieces of gelatin just to give that nice glassy look to all my windows. So assembling the gingerbread house, I completely forgot to hit record and record this part of just standing up the sides of the gingerbread house. They stood up pretty easily, so there's that. Now I'm just putting on the sides with a generous amount of royal icing, and then I'm just kind of reinforcing the sides with more just to make sure that it's as steady as possible. I was honestly surprised at how easily the ends of the A-frame stayed up there. They just went right up. It was fine. It worked out perfectly. I already had the structure. All that work goes into baking and making the template, and then actually assembling the house wasn't too bad. I'm not sure if something kind of shifted while it was baking or probably just human error, but the sides definitely didn't perfectly touch the big walls of the A-frame house. So I kind of had to fill it in with a little bit of extra icing. I don't know, we made it work, it's fine. But yeah, there was definitely, you could see me just trying so hard to make the gaps work. Like maybe if I shift it over a little bit, it'll work. It did not work, just had to fill it in with more royal icing. And that kind of left the sides as well, just kind of skewed to put that end piece on. But anyway, yeah, just just cover it up with icing. Just add more icing, it's fine. But yeah, we I made it work. It's fine. Yeah, so just putting up those sides, getting that back wall on, and then again, just reinforcing with even more icing, making sure that this puppy stays up because, whoa. I got a little premature with the fairy lights. I started sticking them in. I'm gonna do something with them shortly after, but I ended up taking those out for now. And then I'm just sticking on the sides of the little jutting out part of the A-frame house. I braced it a bit and then stuck in those little triangle sides too. I believe that I meant to add a window to the back, to the back end of that, and that's why I left it open, but I did not end up doing that as I baked it. Another thing, some of the pieces weren't fitting perfectly, so I just took more sandpaper, sanded that down, stuck that in place. Everything worked out fine. So I am assembling this gingerbread house on a piece of foam core. I see a lot of gingerbread houses that are just on kind of a square piece of foam core, cardboard, cake board, whatever it is. I wanted something that was just a little more organic, something that would add a little more visual interest. So I drew kind of a wavy line around the whole thing. Almost looks like a patch of ice that you'd see in a movie, a little like a Rudolph or something, or Elf. And I just kind of cut out a border around to make it just look more natural, more nice and organic. Here I am cutting out a hole to lead all my fairy lights through. I'm gonna have them come up through the bottom, and then just have, for now, the battery part where you switch them on just kind of dangle off to the side next to that small wall right there. And if you were curious, I just got a small pack of fairy lights on Amazon, but you could use, you could order fairy lights, or if you have indoor Christmas lights lying around, that would work for this. You can improvise, use whatever. So this is what our house is looking like, completely assembled. I was a little bit nervous at this point. I thought it was looking a little drab. I was worried that the icing that I had applied was way too much, and now that I was going to decorate it, it would be just way crazy and over the top, but it did all end up coming together in the end. So to start, I started piping on the door. I did end up adding more to this because this was just looking like a jagged line to me, but I guess mapping out the shape, whatever. And then I am adding some icing into the crevices of the windows just to make it look like there was fresh snowfall. I'm using a pretty thick icing. It is a little more fluid though, just so, my hand isn't like completely cramping and it goes on a little bit easier. And then I'm just kind of trying to make these little, not necessarily drip marks, but just like little ridges just to make it look a little more like rustic and wintry. Next, I'm just adding some ridges to the edges of the chimney, just again to give it a little bit more of a finished look so it's not so stark. Next, I'm adding some snow in a kind of sloping pattern similar to the top to the front and back of the A-frame, just to give it a kind of nice, kind of uniform organic look. Then I'm adding just more waves to the edges of the addition on the side. And again, just kind of covering up that rough icing I initially used to glue it all together, just to make it look a little more polished, a little more finished, and just give it more of that classic gingerbread house look. So for the roof of the A-frame cabin, I wanted to give it that look that a lot of A-frames actually have. A lot of their roofs are metal with those very long vertical slats, and I thought that would be a nice addition here. Give kind of a new piece of texture to an otherwise just kind of plain brown gingerbread cabin. And I think it actually came out pretty well. There were definitely some snags, definitely broke some lines as I was piping them. I had to, right there, had to wipe one away as I was doing it. But, slowly but surely, it all came together, and I think it looks pretty nice. So just a reminder, this is what we started with when our cabin was initially assembled. Was definitely a little worried, but now it has all come together, has all the final icing on it, looks so nice, so cute, so classic gingerbread house, but it has that really cool A-frame shape. I really loved how this turned out. I'm piping some trees to struggle bus. I am piping some trees to add to our gingerbread house with a large star tip on top of a waffle sugar cone. I'm sure you've seen this technique in a lot of different baking tutorials. But I used Wilton, Kelly green, and some maroon just to tone down the green a bit, give it more of a sophisticated look. I really like how it came out. I think it looks really nice and plush and fluffy, and it was a nice addition to the otherwise very white and snowy gingerbread house. Next, I took those battery packs of the fairy lights that have the switches to turn them on. I flipped them and taped them on the top side of the board with the switches facing out so that there's easy access to turn them on and off whenever I need to. And wood glue. Why are we using wood glue? Because it is the only glue that I actually had at home, and I left my hot glue gun at work for a different arts and crafts project. I'm a graphic designer, so my supplies tend to travel with me everywhere, and whenever I need something, it never tends to be in the spot that I need it at the time that I need it. So anyway, I'm putting down this wood glue to have this polyfill filling stick to it to mimic snow. I probably could have used royal icing, but I was just a little bit worried that it wouldn't stick, although I did use it to fill in some gaps. As a final finishing touch, I took the royal icing and I just added a little bit of snow onto the trees, again, just to go along with that fresh snowfall look. This is the finished house. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this journey. If you do give this a try, I hope you tag me on social media. I'll link all my social media pages below. Or even if you don't make a gingerbread house like this, I hope you do something that gets you in the creative spirit for the holiday season. So again, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take care.